She walked into the CEO's office alone, calm, fearless, and carrying a truth he never expected to hear. Within minutes, her words would tear through his pride, strip away his power, and shatter the world of a millionaire who thought he had everything. Welcome to English Stories with Sherry. Grab a cozy seat and let's journey through magical tales, classic stories, and everyday adventures all in English. Learning the language has never been this fun. When she entered, he looked up. His eyes, sharp and calculating, softened just for a moment. He wasn't expecting her. In fact, he wasn't expecting anyone. He had just finished signing off on a deal worth millions when she appeared at his door, and for a moment, the air between them stilled. "Do you have a minute?" she asked, her voice calm, though her words carried a quiet gravity. "Of course," he replied, motioning her in. He leaned back in his chair, relaxed, confident, unaware that his world was about to tilt on its axis. She sat down across from him, her gaze unwavering. For a long moment, she said nothing, and that silence unsettled him. People rarely paused around him, they rushed, eager to please, desperate to impress. But she was different. She wasn't here to impress. She was here to tell the truth. And when the words left her lips, they didn't come in a flood. They came like a knife, sharp, precise, impossible to ignore. "You think you know everything about this company, about your people, about the choices you've made. But there's something you don't know. Something you need to hear from me." He frowned, his jaw tightening. Millionaires like him weren't used to being confronted, especially not in their own fortress of power. But her tone left no room for dismissal. "You've built an empire," she continued, "but at what cost? You've sacrificed loyalty, trust, and the very people who believed in you, all for the sake of more numbers on a page. And you've been blind to the truth that's been staring at you all along." His hand clenched into a fist. He didn't like accusations. Yet there was something in her voice, something raw, something honest that rooted him in place. "Do you know what it feels like," she asked, leaning forward now, "to give everything you have to someone who doesn't even see you? To stand by someone's side through their darkest days, only to be left behind the moment success arrives?" The millionaire shifted uncomfortably. Her words were not about the company anymore. They were personal. Too personal. He stared at her, searching her face for a sign, a clue. And then it struck him. The memories came rushing back, the long nights, the early days before the money, before the empire, before the title of CEO meant anything at all. She had been there. When no one else believed, when no one else stood by him, she had. And suddenly, his chest tightened. "You left me behind," she said softly, but the softness cut deeper than any scream. "You traded loyalty for ambition. You traded us for them. And you didn't even notice when the one person who would have never betrayed you walked away." He swallowed hard, but his throat felt dry. He had faced hostile takeovers, courtroom battles, and cutthroat negotiations. But nothing, not a single loss in business felt as devastating as those words did now. Her words shattered his world because they weren't just accusations. They were truths. Truths he had buried beneath contracts, wealth, and power. Truths he had convinced himself didn't matter. But they did. Because what good is an empire if it's built on ruins of the heart? The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. He wanted to speak, but no excuse, no explanation seemed worthy. Money could fix 1,000 things, but it could not rebuild what had been broken between them. "You think being a millionaire makes you untouchable," she continued, her voice steady. "But here's the truth, you're more fragile than you know. All it takes is a few words, a reminder of who you used to be, to bring your world crashing down." Her words pierced deeper than he wanted to admit. He leaned back, suddenly weary. The weight of his success, the weight he had carried so proudly, now felt like chains. He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw not just the woman in front of him, but the echo of what they once had, of what he had thrown away. And for the first time in years, he felt powerless. "You're right," he whispered, though the admission burned his pride. "I was blind. I thought if I built all of this, it would mean something. That it would be enough. But I see now it cost me everything that actually mattered." Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away. She hadn't come here for apologies. She hadn't come here for closure. She came because the truth needed to be spoken, because sometimes, words were the only weapon left. She stood up, her chair scraping against the floor. "I don't want your empire. I don't want your apologies. I just want you to remember what you lost. Because I'll never forget what you took." With that, she turned and walked out, leaving the CEO, the millionaire, the man who once believed himself invincible, alone in the silence of his own empire. He sat there, staring at the empty chair across from him, the echoes of her words still ringing in his mind. And for the first time in his life, he realized that all the power, all the money, all the influence meant nothing without her. And that realization shattered him more than any financial loss ever could. But the story didn't end there. Because when someone's world shatters, two paths remain: to rebuild, or to remain broken. In the days that followed, he tried to bury himself in work. He attended meetings, signed contracts, shook hands with men who admired his wealth but knew nothing of his emptiness. Every laugh felt hollow. Every victory meaningless. At night, when the office lights dimmed and the city skyline glittered outside his windows, her words came back to haunt him. "You traded us for them." The truth was undeniable. He had been consumed by ambition, blinded by success, and in that blindness, he had lost the only thing that gave his empire any real worth. And so, the millionaire, the man who once thought himself untouchable, found himself searching for a way back. Not to the empire, not to the wealth. But to something real. But could he? Could a man who had shattered so much ever truly rebuild what was broken? That was the question that lingered. That was the truth he had to face every single day. And though the world saw him as a man who had everything, behind closed doors, he knew he had nothing. Because sometimes, one person's words can break you in ways money never could fix. Thanks for listening to English Stories with Sherry. If you enjoyed today's tale, like, subscribe, and share with a friend learning English. Until next time, keep dreaming, keep learning, and keep listening.